I am Pastor Tony Allstott with Wesley Chapel, United Methodist Church. Today is the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, where we remember those who have died this past year, to honor those who have served, and to show our gratitude for their families. The fourth Monday of May has been set aside every year since 1971 as a day the United States of America pays tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. On May 27th, 1990, Ed Snelling, Major, United States Army retired, gave his testimony at Wesley Chapel, which included an appeal to honor our veterans and remember the fallen. Each year since, Wesley Chapel has dedicated a Sunday for this purpose. In 2013, Wesley Chapel used the occasion to remember each member of Wesley Chapel, both veteran and civilian. Today we remember Roy Wolf. When Roy asked Patty to marry him, he gave her a box of Cracker Jack, and inside the box was a ring. He claims it was a real ring and not a toy. Either way, she said yes. They planned to marry in December of 1952, but they were unable to and had to postpone the wedding. On July 18th, 1953, they were married at Wesley Chapel on Market Street by the Reverend W.A. Amerson. In 1950, the United Nations passed a resolution for countries to aid South Korea against the invasion of North Korea. President Truman ordered American troops be sent to Korea. Roy Wolf was a member of the United States Army during the Korean War. He was at Fort Benjamin Harrison and later stationed at Colorado Springs. Have you ever heard anyone say, "They made enough to feed an army"? Well, Roy was the cook that actually fed the army. In July of 1953, with the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement, the military conflict was over. In October of that year, he was discharged. Roy and Patty, with the help of cousins, built their own house on Highway 111. They lived there until 1964. That's when Roy got a job with the New Albany Police Department and was required to live within city limits. They moved to Budd Road, where they lived the rest of their lives. Although they never had children of their own, they were loving to their nieces and nephews. Roy served on the New Albany Police Force for 30 years. He is known as the only person to hold every rank on the force: major, captain, detective, and then serving as police chief in the 1980s. Roy was well respected in the community and by other law enforcement officers. He had the reputation of treating people fairly. Besides the day-to-day administrative duties, he loved to help with special events like parades and Harvest Homecoming. While having a stellar career on the police department, Roy worked a second job for 26 years. He worked the night shift and weekends as security for Floyd County Hospital, now called Baptist Floyd. On behalf of the people of Wesley Chapel, City of New Albany, and this great country, we remember this great servant who lived his life to protect and serve others. Today, we remember Roy Wolf. On behalf of Wesley Chapel, I want to thank all veterans, active military, the families of veterans and active military for your selfless dedication to the values of our country, founded on freedom and justice. Thank you. Starting in 2013, we also have recognized civilians that have gone to be with the Lord in the past year. In this Memorial Day weekend, we would like to do that. Each of the persons that I will be mentioning in the time that's left with us repented of their sin, accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, made a public profession of faith, and were members of Wesley Chapel United Methodist Church. Today we remember Christine Adams. Christine was born November 19th, 1951, to John and Vernice Casey. She loved traveling, photography, and going to yard sales. She was married to Don for 25 years. They had 2 children, Michelle and Anthony. Christine became a member of Wesley Chapel on June 6th, 2001. I remember Don and Christine coming into church with their great-grandson, Jacob. What a joy it was to have the opportunity to baptize Jacob in the creek here at the 150 campus of Wesley Chapel. Christine is known by her family as a loving mother and grandmother that showed the love of Jesus and God's unconditional love. Today we remember Christine Adams. Today we remember Elizabeth Slider. We knew Elizabeth as Sammy Slider. Sammy was born March 7th, 1930, to Samuel and Mary Wilson. She was married to Warren Slider. They had a daughter, Beth. She was a member of Tri Kappa and Phi Beta Phi sororities at the Indiana University. She joined Wesley Chapel July 8, 1951, and that's when we were still on Market Street. Warren and Sammy were faithful in their worship until her health prevented her from coming, and Warren would stay at home with her. When she needed nursing home care, her husband joined her there at Wedgwood. And when I would visit her, she would always end our conversations with, "Thank you for taking the time to come and see me." She had such a humble and grateful spirit. She had an infectious smile and was loved by all. Today we remember Sammy Slider. Today we remember Jason Roehm. Jason was born in the Evansville area and moved to Floyd's Knobs when he was 3 years old. He went to Lafayette Elementary, Scribner Junior High, and graduated from New Albany High School in 1967. These were the days when teenagers cruised in their cars up and down Spring Street in New Albany, Indiana, which included the parking lot at Frisch's, which was a drive-in and indoor restaurant, but had that drive-in where you would drive up, place an order, and they'd bring it out to you, place it on the tray on your door. Well, Jason, who was cruising, met a girl named Janice on January 1st, 1969, in the parking lot of Frisch's. They were married September 27th, 1970 at DePaul Memorial United Methodist Church. They raised their 3 children on Navajo Drive: Julie, Jennifer, and Justin. Jason took after his father and grandfather and became a tool and die maker. Jason joined Wesley Chapel on July 16th, 1995. Jason loved serving Jesus. He loved to tell people about Jesus. He did a lot of different things, but one of the things that stands out was he took a couple of mission trips to Guatemala. Guatemala is where Pam, who grew up at Wesley Chapel, and her husband Steve are missionaries at La Senda. And that's where he would go. He did a lot of other things in telling people about Jesus that some people knew, but not everybody did. But not everybody can measure the impact of all the things that he did. His daughter Jennifer told me that one time his dad came to see her, and he parked at her home and got out of his car to come into the house. And Jennifer's neighbor had seen Jason get out of his car and walked over to Jason and thanked him. What Jennifer didn't know is that her neighbor had been in prison and that Jason had shared the gospel in prison to this young person. And he wanted to thank Jason. One of the things he did at Wesley Chapel was he would come to the office on Tuesday and get DVDs of the worship service and take them to shut-ins. He had a important prayer ministry. He was definitely a prayer warrior for the kingdom. And in his notes that he wanted used for his funeral service, he made one thing very clear. He wanted it to be said about his life: all glory goes to God. Today we remember Jason Roehm. Today we remember Jim Rutherford. Jim was born April 24th, 1949, to James and Elizabeth Rutherford. He lived along Blackston Mill Road, the same road where his mom grew up. Jim attended McCullough Elementary, Clarksville Junior High, and Clarksville Senior High, but he finished his last 2 years of school at the Kentucky Military Institute. Jim and Neva were introduced to each other by Sandy, who had married Neva's brother. And on June 17th, 1973, Jim and Neva were married at Oak Grove United Methodist Church in Corydon. Jim passed his love for hunting to his two sons, Eric and Travis. Jim's love language was gift giving. They weren't always big gifts, but she treated Neva like a queen and showered her with many small gifts. And he always carried certain things with him he was willing to give away. One of them was a Band-Aid whenever anyone was in need of a Band-Aid. Jim worked for the United States Postal Service for over 30 years before his retirement. He joined Wesley Chapel on September 7th, 1975. Jim was given an unfavorable diagnosis, and he knew he was dying. I went to see him on May 16th, 2019. It would be our last time together. And he spoke openly about life, death, faith, and fate. He said, "When I look back on life, I realize how blessed I've been. I didn't always realize it at the time. And I can say even that today, 4 months past a cancer diagnosis, I'm blessed. I have family and friends who love me and show it. I have people praying for me that don't even know me. Each day I pray for a good day. And each night I thank God for giving me a good day. If it has been a bad day, I try to find the good in it and thank God for the good in the day that I have had. When I go to bed at night, I thank God for a blessed life and for his protection tomorrow. Today we remember Jim Rutherford. Today we remember Helen Collins. Helen Collins was born on April 17, 1935 in Elizabeth, Indiana to Ralph and Irma Duggins. She grew up on West 7th Street in New Albany. She loved to eat cheeseburgers at Duffy's on Main Street. She spent hours playing marbles and jacks and hopscotch. She played softball in the alley with boys. Her sister and she were known for their abilities to whistle. She was a graduate of New Albany High School and a retired inspector. She had 3 children. Her daughters were Lynn and Diane. She was preceded in death by her son, Larry. Helen joined Wesley Chapel United Methodist Church on May 31st, 1981. She enjoyed activities with Mary Martha Circle and with the Square Dance Club. And she also was one of the Red Hat ladies. I will remember her hearty laugh. Helen passed away on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. Today we remember Helen Collins. Today we remember Hazel White. Hazel Louise White, at 95, was the oldest member of Wesley Chapel upon her death on a Tuesday, January 28th of this year, 2020. She was born February 3rd, 1924, and raised on a farm near New Middletown in Harrison County. Her special relationship with her grandfather became the model of what kind of mother and grandmother she wanted to be to her son David and her grandsons David and Andy. She was a retired claims deputy for Indiana Employment Security Division. She was a faithful member of Wesley Chapel, joining on January 12, 1969. She attended Tuesday Bible study in the Mary Martha Circle. She also put together bus trips for the people of Wesley Chapel, with the greatest trip being a trip to the Holy Land, where she got to walk where Jesus walked. Today, she is walking the streets of heaven with Jesus. We remember Hazel White. Today, we remember Earl Balmer. On March 2016, I was invited into the home of Earl to discuss faith and Christ. Earl told me about his past, which included marriage to Mary and a daughter, Benita. He was a bricklayer. He was also a NASCAR driver. That kind of got my attention. And he showed me his accomplishments and pictures in a book, trophies that he had won. He was also a competitive firearms participant and an adventurer. Although he was not specific, he confessed that not all his adventures were godly. I shared the plan of salvation, the concept of baptism, and the need for a public profession of faith in Jesus Christ. He gave his life to Jesus that March afternoon. And in April, at the age of 80 years old, Earl Balmer publicly repented of his sin, professed his faith in Jesus Christ, and was baptized in front of the Wesley Chapel family. During a Wednesday dinner, Earl's daughter, Benita, told me that it was her son, Chase, who suggested that the family start attending church. Their plan was to look around for the right church. The first church they visited was Wesley Chapel, and they never looked anywhere else. On the day Earl was baptized and joined Wesley Chapel, Cliff, Benita, Chris, and Chase also became members. Chris and Chase made public professions of faith and watched their grandfather be baptized. God always has a plan, and God reached an 80-year-old man for Christ through his family. The Apostle Paul says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone, the new is here." Earl died in October of 2019. He's surrounded by family and his dog. And when he died, he was welcomed by Jesus. Today we remember the life of Earl Balmer. Today we remember Dick Webster. Richard John Webster was born on June 19, 1947, to Vincent and Betsy Webster in Kankakee, Illinois. He was the oldest of 3 children. He was active in Boy Scouts and at the Asbury United Methodist Youth Group. He spent summers on the farm with his aunt and uncle in Iowa. Dick was grateful for godly parents who took him to church and introduced him to Jesus Christ. He sang in the youth choir at church, but was instructed not to clap because he could not keep a beat. Dick earned a living as an engineer, but was also a pilot, a skydiver, a ski patrolman, and an amateur radio operator. With his connection in the American Red Cross, Dick taught CPR and first aid. In 1997, Dick went on a walk to Emmaus. His faith was already strong, but the experience really deepened his faith. Later that year, he met Beth, and they eventually married. They attended Bremen United Methodist Church, where Dick held about every leadership position that was available. When Dick's health began to decline, they moved south to New Albany, Indiana, to be close to Dick's daughter, Betsy. Dick and Beth joined Wesley Chapel on July 23, 2017. That year, we celebrated 200-year anniversary as a church. As Dick's health continued to decline, he expressed one regret he had in life. He regretted that he did not say, "I love you," more often. Ironically, the last words Dick spoke were, "I love you too." Today we remember Dick Webster. Today we remember Rosemary Denison. Rosemary was born on June 18, 1924 in New Albany to William and Blanche Mavelas. The Mavelas family never owned a car. Her dad rode a bicycle across the K&I Bridge from New Albany to Louisville to get work. He was a baker and a candy maker from a French family line of bakers and candy makers. Rosemary was a teenager during the Great Depression, and Russ and Rosemary grew up in the same neighborhood and went to school together. They became high school sweethearts at New Albany High School. He asked Rosemary to marry him, and she said yes. On May 28, 1948, they were married at the parsonage of Centenary United Methodist Church on Spring Street. They lived on Captain Frank Road, where they raised their 3 children, Scott, Rusty, and Connie. Russ and Rosemary joined Wesley Chapel on April 2nd, 1950, and were faithful members. And I always remember they like to sit in the same seats every time. Today we remember Rosemary Denison. Today we remember Julie Hardy. Julie was born to Susan and Robert Kimbrough on March 27, 1972 in Fort Worth, Texas. She was diagnosed with a soft bone condition, so her activities were monitored. She avoided high contact sports and games. Her condition did not keep her from being involved in school. She had many friends and loved to be with them. The family moved to this area, and she attended Grantline Elementary, Scribner Junior High, and New Albany High School. In high school, she joined the choir and was a member of the 88.1 WNAS radio team. She met Cleet in the parking lot of a Target department store. He proposed to her on top of a mountain. Together they had Cameron, Christopher, Jack, and Grayson. Jack inherited the soft bone disorder, and together Julie and Jack became advocates for the organization known as the Soft Bones Community. Upon Julie's death, they put the following statement out. Julie Kimbrough Hardy has a long-standing and treasured member of our soft bones community. Julie was a real champion of soft bones and one of the first people to support our efforts when we are a fledgling advocacy organization. We will miss her kindness and willingness to help others. Julie joined Wesley Chapel on May 4th, 1997. She was faithful in her attendance and a loving supporter from the background in a lot of different ways. She was one who wrote notes of encouragement with thoughts of love. Many of you that know Julie would also know Cleet and their sons Cameron, Jack, and Grayson. But I also mentioned Christopher. The family lost Christopher. And so Julie was always had a soft spot for lost mamas and lost families. And over the years, whenever there was a lost mama, whenever there was a child that died, she reached out to those moms and those dads and those families with loving support and prayers and words of encouragement. Today we remember Julie Hardy. Each of these are people that we love here at Wesley Chapel, people who are shining examples of professing their faith in Jesus Christ, serving their family, the church, and the community. We believe that Jesus died on the cross for us, who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And Jesus promises that he is preparing a place for each of us, because the cross did not keep him down. The grave was not the end of the story, for Jesus was resurrected, and as the firstborn of the resurrection, offers each of us eternal life. He calls us to be unselfish. He calls us to have sacrificial love, and he calls us to serve. And we want to lift up those that we have lost this past year, and we want to express our gratitude that when they died, it wasn't over. That Jesus prepared a place for each of them, and Jesus met them to take them to that place. And we also want to remember the families of veterans, the families of active military, and those who are serving or have served. Please join me in prayer. O God, who gave us birth, you are ever more ready to hear than we are to pray. You know our needs before we ask. Help us to remember as people who are prepared to die. And when our days here are accomplished, enable us to die as those who go forth to live, so that living or dying, our life may be in you. Grant us grace that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow we may find hope, in death we may find resurrection. Amen. Thank you for joining this special Memorial Weekend Sunday edition of Wesley Chapel Worship online. And we would love to have you continue to participate with us, whether online at Wesley Chapel UMC on our YouTube page or on Facebook. We have worship services at 8:30 and at 11. And we are holding physical worship service as well. You may come to us. We ask that you reserve a place online so that we can maintain the proper protocol that our governor and our president have asked us to maintain during this time. So we still are grateful for all of those who have fought for our freedom that allows us the freedom to assemble and the freedom to worship. But we also want to be safe in expressing those freedoms, and we want people around with us for a long time. So whether you come to us and worship with us in a physical assembly or in an online presence, you are welcome, and we want to be your home. Grace and peace to you. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.